From the entrepreneur's desk
to the industry front lines
and into real-world operations.
I'm Aaron Cardell, joined by Kyle Hunter and Jake Hamilton, and we're here to take the pulse of real estate technology in just 20 minutes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Proptech Pulse Podcast. Today, I am very excited to have a special guest, Marilyn Wilson. Most of you probably already know Marilyn as the CEO of the Wave Group, as well as founder of RE Technology. But Marilyn, I'd love you to do your own introduction, as you can probably do it best.
Sure. So great to see you, Kyle. We are super excited to be here. We at Wave Group really try to help the whole ecosystem work together better and to do things that are going to listen to what the ultimate people that bring us to show us the money people, those real estate consumers, what they need and how to drive that forward. So we work with technology companies like Lone Wolf. We work with a lot with associations and MLSs. We work with a lot of the large brokers. And we work with technology companies and mortgage and title and all of it to try to figure out a way for all of us to thrive and all of us to answer the needs of what those consumers are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really love having you. I was actually talking to Victor a little bit earlier today, and I know you guys do a lot of work in the space, and you cross over into franchisors, brokerages, but also MLSs. And so today, I think we'd really like to focus on the MLS aspect of the business, which again touches all across the board, really everyone in the real estate space. And, obviously everyone's aware we don't have to relitigate all of the things that are going on, but lots of changes in that MLS space and the world. And so love to hear a little bit of your perspective on just some of the things that are going on. And maybe, first off, how are MLSs redefining their value proposition, after now compensation being removed as one of the key components of what they provide?
It's a really good question. In fact, we did research last November, right after the settlement, and we asked people, how do you feel about your MLS? Is more the same or less valuable than it was before the removal? And about 43% said they thought it would be less, which frankly, I was a little surprised by. I didn't think it'd be that high, but that's pretty significant. And so a lot of what we work with at Wave Group with our MLS clients is to help them understand and to embrace really the power and the amazing things they've already and always done, right? It was kind of okay, we have cooperation and compensation and that's what we do and away we go. When the truth is the daily value that's provided by an MLS really comes from its technology, its training, and its support, right? So and many of them, in fact, in our research and our customer experience index surveys we do across the country with MLSs, we find out that it's about on average, an MLS offers 11 technologies. So it's a significant suite. It's not the old days when it was the MLS system and maybe public records. It's a much broader suite, some of which are things that come from Lone Wolf, like transaction management and many other things, right? So we talk to them a lot about, first of all, sort of stepping back and remembering all the great things that you do, and then figure out ways to take credit for that. In fact, I just drafted a 30-page marketing plan over the weekend for one of those clients, talking about how do you do things like we're doing today? How do you do podcasts? How do you take that amazing technology you offer and translate it into realtor speak? So it's not, hey, there's this new product and it's, training class 101. It's no. How do I get more leads with it? How do I curate relationships? How do I build lifetime client relationships? How do I create a more stress-free transaction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So a lot of what we're talking to them about is really stepping back and remembering that and revisiting training, right? Which again, many technology companies provide. And frankly, the days of ChatGPT make it a lot easier to create content for training these days, right? And so thinking about how do you take those most important tools that are available, and number one, talk to those that are using it most often, which they can get from their tech companies, right? And find out what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and get it in that practical realtor speak term, right? So it's not, hey, we have this little fancy gadget or this little piece of technology that does this. It's like, hey, if you are doing this with a client or a prospect, here's how you can use this specific technology more effectively. So that's a lot of what we're talking about, is just taking credit, but frankly, better communicating the value of things MLSs have always done.
Yeah, and that's, utilization is obviously a hot topic, and a lot of that is, training and using the tools that are provided by the MLS. There's obviously a lot of tools, like you said. Lone Wolf provides Cloud CMA in a lot of areas. Our transaction management platform, ZipForm, Transaction Desk, and so those are very important. I was actually lucky enough to attend Camp Cotality a couple weeks ago. And to your point, there was a couple folks, and they were newer vendors that we were just talking with, and they had a question. It was like, well, what's the difference between an MLS and Matrix or Cotality? And they almost blended as one. And so a lot of times they see that, and the technology is so much of what MLSs provide. That's obviously something that they have to continue to provide to stay ahead of the market. What are the strategic benefits of an MLS technology vendor partnership, beyond maybe just the scale and the pricing considerations and what's cheap? Like, what do you think makes a good partnership between a technology provider and an MLS solution?
Well, I have a big long list for you on that one. The first is to create a communication about what's working and what isn't in the tool itself, right? So and again, through our customer experience index, we find out, we get a lot of open-ended suggestions about whatever they want to talk to us about, right? Whether the MLS wants to hear it or not. So taking those suggestions and creating a partnership back to the technology company, sharing what we're hearing from on the ground people that are using it on a daily basis. And then, of course, the technology company ingesting that and hopefully responding to it by addressing the kinds of things that that actual users are talking about. The second is back to the two things we were talking about earlier. A technology company should and hopefully knows its product and the practical value it creates better than anyone else, right? So how can you arm an MLS? Because you don't need that. Right now we have 500 MLSs trying to replicate technology communications. That doesn't make any sense. For everyone, you guys provide a first-class, valued, well-developed, well-produced content for training and for marketing, and then feed it to them and work with them to distribute it. That's, to me, is one of the most important things, is to keep that communication going. Probably the third, and this is just kind of ongoing now, is MLSs are trying to find ways to create, or I should say, eliminate friction points and hurdles within the sales process. And because they touch so many places, and frankly, Lone Wolf specifically touches a lot of places along the front, you have a chance to help them with that. So working with the MLSs and even helping them create user groups and things to find out where are those friction points, and to the degree you can leverage AI, where it can just eliminate pieces that people used to have to do manually, and they just don't have to anymore. And then along with that, I would say technology integration and data integration to make sure it happens seamlessly, not only from one technology company to the MLS and vice versa, but wherever possible to connect the dots among multiple technologies that the MLS offers to make it easier for, again, taking that friction point out and making it easier for the customer to use not only the technologies offered by one tech company, but for all of them.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. A few years ago, we shifted our rally cry to make it simple. And the whole point of that was to make it easy, remove that friction, work with others, work across the platforms, because that's really what brokerages and agents want. They would rather spend time talking to buyers and sellers, being belly to belly, going and doing, rather than filling out paperwork or making sure compliance is complete and doing all the things that are necessary, but not always, fun. And so as kind of a continuation of that, that is what MLSs also, want to strive and do. So so really training and partner with training and evaluation and really help that, make that seamless. So those are two good points. Another thing that I wanted to just ask you a little bit about, and part of being at Camp Totality, what I heard coming through, and as well as MLS Reset earlier in the year, and some others, was the concept or the non-dues revenue. And so, how important would you say non-dues revenue is to the MLSs out there?
That's a I hate this answer, but that's it depends question, or it depends answer. Some MLSs are very focused on that. Some others do not believe that should be within their purview. They believe they should, everything should be included as a part of their subscriber package, and they shouldn't ask for more and things above and beyond. I do think, though, it's kind of like, I laugh about this, it's kind of like trolls, those dolls, they come back in fashion every few years. I think we're back to non-dues revenues like trolls. It's back in fashion again. So there are definitely MLSs talking more about that. And frankly, I almost hear more from associations talking about it more these days. They're, of course, losing not a lot, but they're losing a little bit of membership just because of the nature of what's going on in this market. And some people just retire or leave or whatever. So I'm hearing it probably more on that side. But there's always some MLSs that are excited about that, especially when they believe that their end user is also benefiting from the technology. Right. So they don't want it to be, okay, well, you pay this much for a core subscription, then you pay this much for something that's above and beyond. Sometimes they get a little uncomfortable with that. But if it's something that's valuable to them and it's an enhancement or upgrade, and it's going to happen anyway, and you can do it at as affordably as you can, then many MLSs are looking at that too.
Yeah, I think MLSs, are very important, and I know there's a lot of fights going on with several of the brands, and obviously, big names with the lawsuits going on, and kind of the one side versus the other. But still, there's a need, to stay relevant, and I think you hit it right. If the technology makes sense, and if there's some ways to for an MLS to have some sort of non-dues revenue or something that is not part of a core offering, be it a rev share or some sort of ways. Yeah, I agree. The subscription thing where it's you have different levels can get a little tricky, and I think it turns people off. There's a publication that's done some things like that, and it's kind of like, well, wait a second, am I already a subscriber? And I got this other level of subscribing, and so definitely can understand where you're coming from there. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Speaking of additional revenue, a few years back, there's quite a kind of a trend, I would say, with some of the larger MLSs getting into the tech space and forming almost side companies to invest and to do some things in the various markets. I think some of them maybe had some levels of success. Others, have, not really had as much success as they thought they would. In case some would say, less than that. What's your take on, just where that's going? Where we're at today, kind of where we're at from a few years ago, and do you feel like that's a future where MLSs are really becoming technology companies, or what's your thoughts on that?
So I kind of see three paths, right? The first is what I guess I would call a more traditional path, where there's a licensing relationship with a technology company. The second is where you kind of and we become a technology company, and then there's a third piece in the middle, which is we're going to work with companies.
Marilyn, let's start over there, and Molly can cut this because you froze for a second. So I missed that the number one. So if you start.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So I kind of see technology partnerships in three ways. One is what I would call a more traditional relationship, where technology companies license their software, provide training support, all of that. The second is sort of the other end of the spectrum, which is MLSs wanting to become MLSs and technology companies. And then there's the third piece in the middle, which is where MLSs are partnering and creating sort of custom instances of technology that their own data is housed and controlled in their own, but they're still not building it, right? And again, it's one of those, it depends, right? I think some of the companies that have taken on building their own technology have done well. I'll give you one example, like Vesta Plus, for example, which is an MLS that's actually building MLS software for others. They're, I think, doing a really good job of that and have scaled it appropriately. But they've also, I think the secret with someone like them is that they're building it first and foremost for their own customers. So they know what MLS users want, and then they're trying to deploy it to others. Some people were trying to build things from scratch or bought things from scratch. And probably unfortunately, the worst example was Remine, where it was purchased for $53 million, and there was a whole bunch of money poured in after that. It didn't work for whatever reason, and then it was recently bought back by a technology company for $1.5 million, right? So that's not a good ROI. The bottom line is being a tech company is not easy.
Yeah.
It looks like people think, running an MLS, that's no big deal. Guess what? That's not easy. Running a tech company, that's no big deal. Guess what? That's really not easy, right? So for me, there are certain people that have unique skill sets, or they've already built technology for so long that they're uniquely skilled to do it. But if someone, and I've had MLSs recently say to me, should we start our own real estate technology company? And my answer usually is no, not unless you have lots of money to put into it and the appetite to lose much of it, or to stick with it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, like, quote, real technology companies do, right? I would say no. But I do like the model where people are like, for example, SourceRE. I don't know if you know those guys, Modern Text building it. That's a database that you contract with them, but all of the data that's housed in it is completely within your realm. So there's places where an MLS can sort of have more sort of influence or guidance over their technology solutions, and they can fuel lots of technology solutions without having to build it from scratch. So I kind of like that model for some things. Again, there's a few that are uniquely qualified to build their own, but I say generally, that's probably not where MLSs need to go. They need to focus on value proposition, support, which is absolutely number one, and training.
Yeah. Well, and certainly I think Remind definitely is one of the bigger ones that shows up. There has been successes, but at the end of the day, like you said, technology is hard. It's not building it. Can you build something to a certain spot and make it as good as something else? Yeah, possibly. It's going to take a lot of money, but what a lot of folks that try to go out and do this, and you saw this with franchises also, and it's because hey, we can get a much higher multiple as a tech company, but a lot of this, when you start building your technology, what you don't realize is as soon as you get done, you're going to have thousands of requests for new features, and great, this is good, but what about this? And then you have to continue to try to keep that up to great, and then you have to support it all, and then you hit that scale level where if you got to have that break point where do you continue on and continue to scale, or are you just kind of putting it back where it is? So it is very tricky, and I think to your point, partnering and having things that are really close to your niche that you control and that you that others would work with, or partnering with companies that specialize in tech. Like, we're not going to go out and become a brokerage, and we're not going to become an MLS. And those are things that Lone Wolf are really going to not focus on doing, where some have. But we understand that each kind of company has their lanes and their focus, and tech is kind of what we do. So we'd rather partner with MLSs and and help provide, and really have the MLSs craft their needs so that we can help solve those, as opposed to having it other ways. But no, I appreciate that. I think we got a couple minutes left. I think really, what are your predictions for kind of the future of MLS technology and member value creation? Like, what do you see in the next 2, 3, 5 years that's going to continue to change how we view MLSs?
Well, there's a few things that I'm seeing, some of which are tech, but not always, right? So one of them that we're seeing is a move toward what they're now calling open MLS, right? Which is an MLS that's available to all licensees in the state. In fact, we saw from April to May, there were 888,000 agents in April, and by May, there were 941,000 agents represented by those. Wow. So I think that's going to become pretty ubiquitous. Unfortunately, a lot of it's being motivated by risk mitigation as opposed to proactivity, but it is what it is. And I think it's a good thing for the industry. It allows for more revenue opportunities, allows consumers to have more listing inventory, and really just a larger collaboration across, which is what we promise anyway. So I think that's a good thing. The other thing we're seeing a lot of, and I think this does have implications for technology, is after the sale of RE Colorado, they're now seeing Wave Group has a broker, or I should say a mergers and acquisitions division, and this is kind of coming to us. Really, we built it for brokerages, and now it's coming on the MLS side. So there's a lot of people looking to say, how much is their MLS worth? And are there opportunities for us to buy, to sell, to divest, to a whole bunch of different things that are coming? So that might potentially lead to more consolidation, which I think is a good thing, because the larger MLSs in many cases can afford larger partnerships with companies like Lone Wolf and others, and may be able to deepen the types of solutions that they can offer. The other thing we're seeing, which isn't, again, not necessarily technology, but important, is, two things that, again, we're directly involved with. One is finding out what your customers really think, right? If you can't do better, you can't offer a better technology suite if you don't know what you have is working or not. So we're seeing more and more MLSs looking at things like our Customer Experience Index survey and participating in those, so they get a baseline understanding. And I can tell you, we worked with one MLS that was a younger, newer, smaller one. They had 2 years of these surveys, and it just was kind of painful. And they were like the little engine that could. They kept grinding and grinding and grinding, and getting better training, getting better support, doing all the things that you do. And then their third year, their numbers just exploded. So it's really exciting to see. I love it when people really listen to their customer, do what they ask for, and then technology is a big part of that. Support and training is a big part. So that's another big thing. And then the fourth, I would say, is strategic planning is getting to be more strategic. Looking at technology partnerships, looking at what really matters to customers, looking what really drives their interest and their support of their MLS, and then building, the way a technology company does, like build a technology or a strat plan, like in agile sprints, just like technology companies do. So build in quarterly goals, quarterly executables, come back and measure those. And one ask I will have of Lone Wolf and all tech companies that might be watching this is, we really need your help to provide better analytics so that an MLS can really understand what's happening, right? How many people are using it? What company are they from? How are they using it? How often are they using it? In what part of the sales process are they using it? Are they top producers or brand newbies of the whole spectrum, right? So that information will help all MLSs get better and make all technology companies, I think, respond more effectively to what customers are looking for.
Yeah. Well, Marilyn, that was great. I really appreciate all the insight today. And thank you for joining the pod.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
That's our pulse for today.
Keep innovating.
Keep implementing.
And keep moving real estate forward.